I think it'd be fair to say that the search for self-identity is really integral to the problem of gender dysphoria. Who we are is kind of the crux of the matter. But I think it's really important to understand where our identity comes from. A few weeks back, I went to the National Eucharistic Congress, this big gathering of like 50,000 plus Catholics. It was so fun. It's so many people. The halls were packed. It was crazy. But prior to going to the Congress, I found that I was in a bit of a low spot in my faith. I was filled with like a million questions about gender. When I start asking those questions and trying to dive into them, I get kind of focused to a point where it's really hard to focus on other things. And so a problem I knew I was going to have is trying to really get into the week, because the topic of the week was the Eucharist, not gender. What really surprised me though was that didn't happen. I didn't find this big struggle to really focus on that one thing. My questions about gender didn't get in the way. I think it's actually pretty straightforward why that didn't happen for me. And it comes down to one main fact. The fact that dysphoria and the Eucharist are related. The farther we are from God and the Eucharist, the worse dysphoria gets. And that's because, as Catholics, we believe that God is the source and summit of everything, of all truth. Well, that includes the truth of who we are, the truth of who I am. So, during this week at the National Eucharistic Congress, what I found is that I wasn't actually stepping away from these questions of identity. I was actually looking at the answer of these questions of identity. I found that as the week went on, I was becoming more and more of myself than I had ever felt. Does that mean my dysphoria went away? No. Does that mean I have the answers to these big, complicated questions about gender? No. But what I found was that it didn't matter. The more I focused on the Eucharist and the closer I got to God in the Eucharist, God, who is the source and summit of all things, the closer and more free I was to be myself. I found I didn't really worry about what other people thought as much. I would go out and, I'm an introvert, but I would go out and talk to people, and it felt so easy. It didn't feel like it was this big chore to have conversation with people, because I was getting closer and closer to who I was. When I think about mental health, I think there's this fact that if you have bad relationships, your mental health doesn't get better. You need to have good relationships in order to help your mental health. And when we focus on God, we get closer and closer to the greatest relationship. We're designed to have a relationship with God. And so the farther away we get from that, the less and less fulfilled we're going to be. If we're made for a relationship, then not being in that relationship is discomforting. And that encompasses all parts of our being, including our gender, including all these other big questions. So did my gender dysphoria go away? No, it didn't go away. Did I have the answer to these questions? No, I didn't. But I did have the thing that I need to start walking down that path. And that is that relationship with God. And that is God in the Eucharist, because it's Him there in the flesh. If we want to get closer to who we are, we need to get closer to the Eucharist. It only makes sense to me that the farther and farther we get from Him, the more and more difficult things will become. Hey guys, thanks again so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to hear my random opinions and thoughts on this matter. I do think it's really important to cultivate that relationship and other relationships. So we need a relationship with God first and a relationship with others. If you're a Catholic out there who struggles with gender dysphoria, this is the place for you. So if you liked this video, like the video, feel free to give me a subscribe. That way my videos will keep popping up in your feed, and we'll be able to keep working on this thing and keep moving forward. I also am gonna try and put an end card, I think somewhere over here. So there's probably another video here that you could watch. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.